From seed to harvest, these lovely looking tomatoes were grown, to all intents and purposes, completely for free. Here's how. Go over to your friend's house and ask them to make you a cheese and tomato sandwich for your lunch. And if you like the tomatoes, borrow some. Find a small empty container, in this case it's just an empty jelly tub, and fill it with some of your own finely sifted homemade compost, made from your own composted food waste, so in effect free. Now this can be spent compost at this stage, as the seeds in their early days, they only need a medium to root in and moisture. The seed itself actually contains everything that the plant needs for the first few days of life. Squeeze out some seeds and very lightly cover them with compost. Now don't cover too deeply, but also don't worry too much about it, because what I found is tomatoes don't understand millimeters or inches, so as long as it's quite near the surface, it'll be fine. Place the little pot somewhere warm. In my case, it's on top of the bearded dragon's vivarium. A radiator shelf will do nicely. Also, I placed these inside a Ziploc bag, but any clear plastic covering would do. 1 week later, and we have 2 seeds sprouted and a mushroom. Now, the fact that only 2 seeds have sprouted, I'm going to move on with these 2 guys. Oh dear. Zuki's looking at me like I owe him rent money. Now, these have gotten quite leggy in their first week, so it's time to transplant out. I'm using seed cells, but again, any small container would do. The compost, again, is homemade from composted food waste, so effectively free. The tomatoes will produce roots all the way along their stems, so they can be planted to just below the first leaves. This will help address the leggy issue, and it'll support the seedlings anchoring and growing new roots. These were then brought indoors and continue to grow on in a warm back room under normal light. I don't have these specialist grow lights. I've seen them for like 180, 200 quid, so keep jogging on. But seeing as the evenings at this stage in the year are still dark, we have the house lights on quite a bit. And these 2 were placed under 2 LEDs in a corner. The young plants now have a stronger stem. They're not as leggy, and they're putting on lots of new leaves. I'm going to focus on the bigger and stronger of the 2 seedlings. I just want to grow on 1 plant. 21st of March, and just over 3 weeks since the seeds were sown, and it's time to pot on again. Here I'm using a ½ kilo empty yogurt pot. I punched some holes in the bottom using a heated fork. I don't recommend taking this approach with your best silverware, by the way. I'm using my own homemade vermicompost harvested from the worm bin. The young tomato plant is now vigorously growing at this stage, so it needs a good quality medium to sink its roots into. The roots are looking healthy, and again the plant is potted on with the stem just a little deeper than before, and the pot topped up so that the compost is just below the level of the bottom leaves. Now here I've used perlite just because I had some and it helps to retain the moisture, but you don't need to use perlite, so topping up with the compost is fine. 10 days later, and the tomato plant is bursting with new growth and ready to be potted on again. Now, I made a mistake with this pot. It really wasn't big enough to begin with. A bigger pot would have been better at this stage, and it also would have saved this additional potting on session. So what I've done is I've put it on into a 5-litre container. 4 weeks on, and the plant is ready to be potted on again, and this is for the last time. It's now going to be potted on into its final home. As I'm trying to grow this tomato plant effectively for no cost, I'm just going to use this 15-litre food grade container I happen to have lying around and is currently filled with rubble from the garden. It's going to be filled with sifted homemade vermicompost, and I'm not going to be adding any nutrients like purchased commercial fertilizers. So that's why at this stage I want to make sure the compost that's going in for the tomato plants is good quality. And all I'm going to do is just top the container up as and when necessary. And from this point on, the plant is going to live outside. Now, there is a hardening off stage I could go through, but we're not expecting any frost, according to the medium-term weather forecast. So this little tomato plant is going to have to just tough it out. Early June, and the tomato plant has put on so much growth. I really should prune it properly back at this stage, but to be honest, I mostly leave tomatoes to their own devices, and apart from picking off the lowest soil touching leaves to help reduce any risk of disease and some of the suckers. And I'm not sure if I'd take this approach out of laziness or because I just genuinely, I'm not too sure what I'm doing when it comes to pruning tomatoes. I'm going to leave it pretty much as it is now. There's lots of flowers, and this spot where it is at the top of the garden, and it gets the most amount of sunshine throughout the day. Early August, and the tomato plant is bursting with ripe and ripening tomatoes. We had some high winds, and that combined with the weight of the tomatoes, some of the vines have suffered, as you can see. So I was forced to cut back a little bit and to use some extra string and supports. But apart from that, other than being watered with water from the rain barrel, this plant has just been left to do its own thing. And 1 week later, here on the 8th of August, it's now time to harvest some of these little beauties. Some are ripening still, and I'm guessing the final tally is going to be somewhere in the region of about 100 or more tomatoes from this one plant, growing in a 15-litre container. And if you think, it was all pretty much grown for free, so that can't be bad. Now, I can hear a cheese and tomato sandwich calling me for lunch. As always, thanks for watching. Bye for now. Hold on, Gouda, I'm coming!